This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
When you pick up some scratches, cause you want a fun break, the playful way you scratch is the next choice you should make. You can make your dog's leg kick and scratch with that. You could even grab a laser pointer and use your cat. You can build yourself a homemade scratching machine, or use a piece from your chess set. Go ahead, grab the queen. Scratch like a DJ with your record player. A cactus could scratch off that scratchable layer. Cause when it comes to scratching, there's a million playful ways. Thanks to scratchers from the California Lottery, a little play can make your day.
Please play responsibly. Must be 18 years or older to purchase, play, or claim.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hey everyone. Before we get to this week's episode, we just wanted to note that we had some audio difficulties with the recording. We've tried to edit it the best we can, but we won't sound our best this week. Apologies, but we hope you enjoy this episode. And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest will bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Tyler Liston. He is a writer for Nightmare on Film Street. He is one of the nicest people that I know on Twitter. And he is also a horror fiction writer, Tyler. Is that correct?
Is attempting to be one. Yes.
Yes. I'm excited. I know you have you said a book coming up this year, maybe?
Yes. Right now it is finished, and I'm ready to shop it around a little bit. If not, I'll just be putting it out myself. So yeah, it's coming out.
Oh, that's so exciting! Can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. It's a little.
If you would like.
No. It's not like I'm not being secretive. It's just a little convoluted. Okay. There's a small town here in Illinois where I'm from, and it was founded by Swedish settlers back in the 1800s, and they keep to a lot of their Swedish traditions, and one of them is St. Lucy's Night, which is usually like the week before Christmas. And during that time, they light a bunch of candles and do this procession through this 150-year-old church where they select a St. Lucy girl who wears a crown of candles and is basically offered as the virginal sacrifice, metaphorically. The roots of that holiday are ancient, and St. Lucy comes from the same root word as Lucifer, the bringer of light. Mm-hmm. So my book is exploring whether, it's kind of, what if this small town of like 50 people actually has Lucifer in the basement of the church, and they are doing this as a real sacrifice. And it really bummed me out when Midsummer came out. because
I was going to say this sounds similar to Midsummer.
Shut up about it. No. No, I was 40,000 words deep into it when I read about Midsummer, and I was like, okay, well, this is just fantastic. But everyone was really supportive, had me keep going, because once, folk horror is...
Yeah, folk horror is amazing, and I feel like Midsummer just kind of, like, got people really excited for it, and I think that'll just make it even cooler and more, like...
Yeah, the 6 people that read this book are going to love it, so it's going to be great.
Oh, so exciting. And so when do you think that's going to come out?
I'm looking for the spring, but we'll see.
Cool.
I have crippling self-doubt, so, I've already, gone back to it 40 times, and I'll probably do it another 20, so, but we're looking at the spring.
Cool. That's exciting.
That's awesome. And so you also do film criticism, is that correct?
Yes, I write for Nightmare on Film Street, much like Miss Mary Beth. I've been doing that for 2 years now, and it's been like the greatest experience of my life. I absolutely love it. It's I don't do a lot of reviews because I'm just not that smart. No. But like when I'm like in the office when Andy Bernard's like, "Ooh, this muffin is bad." That's kind of my review style. Like it's like I really loved it or I really didn't like it, but it takes me a long time to really kind of dig into why I didn't like something. So
okay,
but every month I do kind of a true crime article, which looks at the true horrors that inspired horror films throughout history. And I also do an article about horror movie novelizations, where I'll read those, and some of those are wild, man. But
I know.
Yeah, I'll read through those, kind of pick the differences and what went right.
It's really cool. It's really interesting. Because I've never really thought about horror movie novelizations at all, so I didn't really realize how big of a thing it was.
Yeah,
It was really huge, I know.
Yeah, I really didn't know either until I just got into this mode of, I need to collect everything Halloween related. So,
yes.
I had gone through all, getting the vinyl, and the figures and the shirts and everything. I was like, oh, what's next? And then I found that they had novelizations of the first 4 Halloween movies, and kind of tracking those down and finding all these kind of gems along the way is what drove me to it.
Yeah, I've talked about this before a little bit on this podcast, but like when I was a kid, there was a time where all of a sudden my parents were really conservative with my movie choices, but they weren't so much with reading. So like a lot of times I would read the novelization that came out before I even got a chance to see the movie. I remember in particular cool. Jaws: The Revenge, and which adds a voodoo shark to the mix.
Yeah, that's one of the more wild ones that I've read. Yeah, it's got like a voodoo priest and some sharks.
And revenge is the motive.
Yeah, it's wild.
What?
It's wild. Yeah.
Puts a curse on him, and the shark is potentially supernatural. But I guess it was in the original movie, and it got cut out or something, or they changed it, or
probably for the best.
Well, I mean, kind of would save that movie. The movie's kind of a mess.
True, fair
but
enough.
The other one that always came to mind when I was reading was the Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. I had that book, and I was reading that before I ended up seeing the movie, which is probably my least favorite of the movies.
Yeah. They actually came out with a combo just called The Nightmares, and it's got like 1 and 2, and I'm gonna butcher this, but then it also combines like Dream Warriors and Dream Child into another book.
Wow.
And they're so like those novelizations are fantastic because they were based on earlier scripts, so a lot of the like kills that Freddy did that didn't make it into the movie, they were in the novelization. He could still, it was like getting something new, in that, and when I just did Halloween 4 for NOFS, and it was word for word the exact same as the movie. So for a guy, you know, like you, Terry, that wasn't able to see the movie, you basically did see it if you were to read that.
Yeah, it's such a crazy time. Do they even do those anymore? Novelizations as much?
No. I remember. I work at Barnes and Noble, so you know, I see some on the shelf. Like they had a Crimson Peak, which I should have picked up at the time. And you know, Alien is still on the shelf. That one will always be there. But yeah, they do still come out with some, but they're hidden on the shelf. You got to really track them down.
Wow. Huh. That's cool.
Yeah, but some of those novelizations are completely wacky, like you said, Terry. The Jaws: The Revenge. That is the worst movie I probably have ever seen. So, like, literally, you could wipe your nose on a sheet of paper and it would be a better story. So, oh my God. But no, it was that novelization was one of the wackiest ones.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So what have you been watching recently, Mary Beth?
Let me think. So I started a new job about a month ago, and I've been a little bit busy. So my horror movie viewing has kind of done a very intense plummet, unfortunately. But we haven't recorded since I've seen Bliss, which I have been told to see many times. I finally saw it. It's so fucking good.
Right?
I am a vampire freak. And so I was, very excited to see this because it reminded me a lot of the movie The Transfiguration, as well as Vampire's Kiss. The Transfiguration being a 2015 movie about a young black boy in Brooklyn who thinks he's a vampire, and it's about him being obsessed with vampires. And then Vampire's Kiss being a Nicolas Cage movie that's like American Psycho, but we even less fucked up, but also more fucked up in a way. Joe Bagos is fucking killing it this year.
Yes.
I haven't seen VFW yet, but his visual style is insane, and it's just beautiful, and then Desi is beautiful, and
she's gorgeous.
Everything is just so incredibly my shit in that movie. And my boyfriend watched it with me, and he was like, "That was certainly a film," and I said, "It sure fucking was." So I loved it. So everyone who was waiting for me to see Bliss, I am obsessed with it.
Yay! Have you seen it, Tyler?
Oh, he needs it.
I have not seen it.
Oh, you need to.
So good. I mean, I know you have 3 children, so it's probably hard to watch movies, but it's real good. It's on Amazon, so it's pretty easy to find. And then, so this weekend, I was texting Terry about this. I had a not early, late 90s, early 2000s vampire movie renaissance in my apartment, where I watched Blade, the original Blade, and the original Underworld for the first time, and let me tell you, I'm hype. I'm on that train. I don't know what would have happened to me as a child if I had watched those movies when they had come out, because I would probably be a very different person in terms of just being real horny all the time. But good God, Blade, Stephen Dorff in that movie has awakened a part of me that I have never known to be alive.
Yeah, we were DMing back and forth, and that was I remember seeing that movie in theaters, and that was a time where I was like, I think I like boys, because he just oozed sexuality.
What the fuck? And then I watched Underworld last night, which I somehow missed, and I just love a stupid vampire movie where there's so much lore that doesn't actually make any sense, but it's so good, and just oh, man.
Vampire movies with guns are always great. So
it's so stupid. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. It's so stupid. Tonight it's a full moon or something close to it. And I texted my boyfriend a picture and said, "Where the lichens at?" And he's like, "You need to stop."
Come through.
Where the werewolves at? So that's what I've been doing with my time as of late. I haven't really watched. I'm now that I'm getting back into the swing of having a full-time job and knowing how to have an adult schedule. I'm starting to watch more movies again, but it's been a little bit of an empty time. as I figure out how to be a human adult.
Terry, what have you sucks?
Terry, what have you been watching? I know you've been covering a couple of festivals and stuff.
I have been, but the movie. There's two movies I want to talk about that aren't from the festivals, but Eli.
Oh my God, I forgot about Eli. Oh, how did I forget about that movie?
Have you seen Eli, Tyler?
No, that's the one on Netflix, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the most batshit bonkers movie I think I have seen in a long time. It has like this core team that's really good. The director is the guy that did Sinister 2, and then the script is co-written by the two people that did The Autopsy of Jane Doe, and then also the guy that wrote Cheap Thrills. And the movie feels like that kind of synergy, because it is the places it goes in that third act is just it floored me. It knocked me on my ass, and I'm like, what the fuck am I even watching?
I was texting Terry while I was watching it. It was like late at night, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'm gonna watch Eli. I was texting Terry at the end. I was like, is this really happening? And it was like a thread of like all caps being like, this movie is so stupid. I love every minute of it. Like, it's so, like, the ending is just so ridiculous and, like, stupid that you can't help but love it, because it's like, what? It's fucking perfect. It's fucking perfect. Like, I don't even know what to say. It's fucking perfect.
Give me a brief synopsis.
Okay, so
if you can.
Eli is a boy in a bubble who
I'm in. Just stop it there. I'm in.
He is deathly allergic to the outside world. To the point that, like, anytime the air, like, there's one scene where his little suit, he goes out in, like, this hazmat suit when he has to be carted around. And there's one part where, you're killing me, hear that? Where the suit gets ripped and the air gets in there, and all of a sudden, like, his skin starts to, like, burn up. Like, he's gonna burst into flames almost. And so his parents have found this doctor that works in some kind of gene therapy, gene something or another, and she can fix whatever ailment is bothering him. So they take him to this manor that looks like it's out of some 1930s gothic Universal horror film.
Yeah, it's like almost like it's almost like the house in Haunting of Hill House.
Yes, exactly. And he's inside this like hermetically sealed place where they're doing all these tests on him, trying to get him well. And he starts seeing something, a ghost maybe, that is like haunting the place. And he starts to dig into what happened to the other patients that used to be here. And then it just goes batshit crazy. I mean, I don't know. I remember when Matt Donato, he tweeted he was going to watch this movie, and I sent him a tweet and was like, $100 says that you're not going to guess how it ends. And he started like sending me these tweets about like, I think this, and I'm like, no, you're not. Nope. And he just was like absolutely floored by the end of it too. So like, where it starts and where it ends are two completely different places.
It sounds like 4 different movies, and I'm in. So.
It really is like 4 different movies, and I was laughing because like I just didn't realize how stupid the movie sounds when you explain it. He's a boy in a bubble who's allergic to outside, and his parents take him to a haunted house. Like, it sounds so dumb, but it's actually like very creative and very ballsy.
Well, like the first part is kind of like a mix of a typical ghost story with like a medical thriller, because the kid thinks that things aren't going as planned, but of course everyone else is saying it's just the medication you're taking that's doing it. So like there's that kind of paranoia with it that I think works really well, and then there's the ghost story aspect that I think works really well, and then there's the third part that just is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so everyone please watch Eli. It's on Netflix. It's like not that long. It's a good, like, it's cold as shit, I don't want to go outside, and like movie. It's worth watching for sure.
And then, because I am a man of many tastes, we go from that to Parasite, which oh my god, what a perfect movie.
Tyler, have you seen Parasite?
I have not. You guys are going to keep asking me, and I'm going to keep saying no, I haven't. But I am just filled with jealous rage of everyone that has seen it. It's one of those that, you know, it's not really playing around me, and I just haven't had a chance.
The only reason I was able to see it is because the Alamo Draft House, where I'm in Omaha, where I'm at, they did a one night like advanced screening of it, and then I think it might have opened limited there. But like, if it weren't for Alamo, there's a ton of movies that I would not have any opportunity of seeing. But man, what a good movie! I went to go see with a couple friends that had never seen a Korean horror film. Oh
boy. Oh boy.
And so, like, the one thing I like about the filmmaker in particular, Bong Joon-ho, and Korean cinema in general, is that they take a movie and they take different genres and somehow jury-rig them together to the point that, like, it starts out as one thing and then becomes something completely different. So in the beginning of Parasite, it's this kind of funny story about this group, this family that's poor, inserting themselves into the life of this rich family, and kind of grifting them for money. And it's very funny. My friends were laughing the entire time, and at one point my friend was like, I thought this was like a thriller, and I'm just like, you just wait, it'll get there. And it's such I think it's probably one of his most accomplished films, and I love his work.
I would agree. I think like this one is much like more deliberate, and
yes.
And that sounds weird because like Bong Joon-ho is such a good writer and such a good director, and all of his movies like have a lot of purpose. They like have a lot of things to say, but they can be a little messy in a way that I like. But like Snowpiercer's messy.
Yes.
The Host is a little like tonally messy.
It is.
But like that's not I mean, I still love those movies, but Parasite feels like it hits every beat at the perfect time. Like it feels just like you said, one of his most accomplished movies. Like he's finally really figured out how to time his narratives and like make all of his points. And that it just was like so much more polished, I feel like, than any of his previous movies. Even visually, like the cinematography in this movie is just like so many clean lines.
Oh, it's just
so razor sharp.
Yes.
The whole thing.
I think it blew me away, and I was going in with like really high expectations because everyone has been like shouting about it from the film festivals and all the early premieres. So I'm like, I'm going in with my hype meter to the roof, and it still exceeded it. I think it's great. I think it probably, spoiler alert, might be my favorite movie this year. Yeah,
and like I was really worried about the hype because we've all been ruined by the hype machine before.
Yeah.
And it's a little scary to go into something that like I'm very excited about. And, like I love Korean horror, I love Korean thrillers, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be one of those movies that's like probably really tonally jarring to some people. Like Burning was very like very different movie, but I feel like it was like the big Korean movie last year, which is weird that I even have to say that. But like it was like the movie that everyone talked about, but it was very polarizing. I feel like Parasite is not polarizing. I feel like I haven't really seen any negative things about this movie.
Yeah.
So everyone should see it. It's like, it's just so good. It did really well at the box office too, surprisingly, for like a
it's doing really
movie,
well,
which is really nice.
Yeah. What? Go ahead.
I was talking about Wounds, actually. I wanted to talk about Wounds.
Yes.
Because, Wounds came to Hulu. It's the new Babak Onvari movie. He did Under the Shadow. And so he did Wounds, which is with Armie Hammer and Dakota Johnson. And it's based off of a short story by Nathan Ballingrud, who is one of my absolute favorite short story, or one of my favorite authors, really. It's based on his short story, The Visible Filth. And it's this really weird story about a shitty bartender in New Orleans who finds a phone left at the bar where he works, and what he finds on that phone, it's awful. And it's kind of him trying to deal with what he finds on that phone, but also realize that he's kind of a bad person. And it's a really interesting story, and like Nathan Ballingsrud has a really interesting style of writing where he's very focused on his characters and it's very introspective and very negative. And I think that it mostly works in the movie. I think like the chemistry between the performers, like Armie Hammer and Dakota Johnson, is like not very good. So like their line delivery between one another like is not very convincing.
I wasn't sure if it was the script or the acting, because there was some of the lines they had to say were a little
and like
iffy, but then
that's the thing with his short stories. Like his dialogue is very like clipped. It's very short. So like the dialogue that they say in the movie is almost like lifted from the short story, but it doesn't feel as clipped. It doesn't feel like as emotionless. Like I don't read it that way. I think like it's hard maybe to deliver those kinds of like very emotionally charged but short pieces of dialogue, because I think there's a lot of emotion that like Nathan Ballingsworth writes with that you can't. It might be hard to kind of portray as a person.
Yeah,
I don't know. I like also like I'm obsessed with his writing, and like I am. I
picked up the audiobook of the Wounds series short story series.
The anthology,
yeah. And I've listened to the very first story in it yet, but I haven't gone to the Wounds one.
The Atlas of Hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I really dug that one.
You have to read The Butcher's Table. I'm getting a tattoo from The Butcher's Table from that short story. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, the audiobook is actually really good too. They have different narrators reading each story, it seems like. But the guy that did the first one did a fantastic job. But I haven't listened to any more other than the first story, but I'm looking forward to it because it was one of those things where I watched Wounds and I really enjoyed it. I think it's a messy movie. I don't think it's perfect.
Oh, absolutely not.
But like there's something there that I wanted to see more of, and so that's...
Yeah, and like the problem that I had with it is that like they didn't actually mention like the core part of the story. Like they don't explain to you really like what is happening, and it's weird. Like
it's very ambiguous.
Should I not spoil it? Should I not do spoilers?
Let's not spoil it.
But basically, like
maybe we should dig into it more in a upcoming.
Yeah, but like the main thing that's happening, like it's really not explained in the movie about like the specifics of what's going on, but in the short story it is. And in the short story it makes a lot more sense, and I think it like, and it's like, I don't know, the whole thing just makes a lot more sense to me. Nathan Ballingsworth also got me really into the idea of like fucked up angels, and like I tweeted about this, like representations of angels as bad and like nasty, and I have become like very interested in that idea of like the figure of the angel being like not a nice figure but actually something like very grotesque, which is something he writes a lot, especially in Wounds, that short story collection. It's like very religious, like focused on the idea, like a very different idea of hell and heaven, which I think is really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about you, Tyler? Have you been watching anything recently?
Well, as you guys have mentioned, I have 3 children in diapers. So my movie watching time is non-existent. But what I have done in the past week is I've gone back to some of my favorites. So I'm having trouble finding time to watch new stuff. But going back and finding, the joy that I felt while watching some of these older ones has been what I've been focusing on.
Awesome.
So this past week I've watched The Witch for the 800th time.
Yes.
I am such a slut for The Witch.
As am I.
Me and my wife went and saw it in the theater when it came out, and she hated it. And
oh, really?
Well, she was the trailers and the ads that came out on TV were promising a scarier movie.
Okay.
And that's
okay.
Syndrome.
Yeah,
yep.
And that's what she was expecting, and I'm just sitting there, like sitting up in my seat and drooling the whole time. So that one is almost on constant rotation at the house. But the other one that I checked out this week, which it'd been maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years since I've watched it, was the original Shudder from 2004, from Thailand.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. Not the one with, Roy in it. But and Joshua Jackson. Oh
my God, that's right.
Yeah, the original, directed by the two guys whose names I would just slaughter, so I won't even try.
Yeah, I forgot it was. I forgot it was from Thailand.
What is this?
Shudder, the one. There was a really shitty American remake where it's like the guy takes pictures and like a ghost girl is in it.
It's like it's spectral photography, ghosts. It's like I mentioned, it was Joshua Jackson, who is handsome, but like if he's not in Fringe, I'm not watching it. So, this photographer and his girlfriend are driving in a car and they run over a woman. And they look back and whatever, it's kind of spooky or whatever. But it turns out that this black form spirit is showing up in his pictures. And it really, it turns out the girlfriend does some investigating and finds out that it was an old classmate of his that is haunting them. It's probably one of the scariest movies. I get scared easily, so I mean, obviously we're talking about Ghostbusters 2 in this podcast, so like I get scared pretty easily. But just the imagery of the ghosts in the pictures is just it drives me wild, and it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it is really good. Mm-hmm. I watched it early. I watched it for the first time earlier this year.
Yeah,
is it readily available here in the States? The original?
I had to dig out an old DVD copy that I had from.
Okay.
It's on Netflix.
Is it really?
It's on Vudu too.
I spent so much time going through my binder. Like, what the heck?
Say, Jerry?
Is it called the original one called Shudder? Then, if I look.
Yeah, like SHUTTER. It's on Netflix.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna have to go watch that.
Yeah, it's really good, and it's pretty short too.
It's really good.
Not very long. It's very much in the vein of like The Ring and those kind of like creepy technology is pretty fucked up movies, but it's done really well and like in a really eerie way.
Mm-hmm. I vaguely remember the American remake, and I just assumed it was another Japanese redo. Because it came around around the same time as or a little bit after maybe The Ring, and
it was like Ring 2, and then they did like The Eye and all those. They came out with the American versions, and they're all fine. I love The Ring, the American version. I thought that's one of my jams, but
it's a good one.
Yeah, but it came out after that. They were kind of riding the wave. But yeah, no, that's what I've been watching. Usually when we get the kids to bed, I'm instantly asleep.
That's valid.
Yeah, so it's either I put on Forensic Files or something murdery to fall asleep to. But that's because sometimes, like I mentioned, I get really scared. So if I were to put something on, even as batshit crazy as Eli sounds, I wouldn't be able to sleep. So that's a middle of the day type of thing for me.
Gotcha.
Well, now that we kind of talked about what scares Tyler, maybe we start talking about the movie he's brought with him today to talk about.
What did you bring with you, Tyler?
Well, a lot of late 80s nostalgia is what I brought with me. Obviously, I selected Ghostbusters 2. It's my first memory, really, of my life is seeing this in theater back in 1989. I was born in 80. I was 4 years old when this came out, so this was like the first movie I ever saw. My grandparents took me, and as we are going to discuss, it was the worst decision of their life. But my introduction really to the really spooky was Ghostbusters 2.
Huh. So before we jump into the specifics, if you guys haven't seen Ghostbusters 2, want to give you a little bit of a synopsis about what it's all about. So it turns out the Ghostbusters in Ghostbusters 2 are on par with superheroes because unlike Tony Stark, they had to deal with the repercussions of the destruction they caused in the first film. Now, the Busters are broken up and doing odd jobs to keep afloat. But all that changes when Dana, Sigourney Weaver, Dana's son Oscar gets targeted by a possessed painting of Vigo the Carpathian. Vigo, who on a mountain of skulls in a castle of pain sat on a throne of blood, wants Oscar to be reborn. Hijinks ensue with the river of slime rolling underneath New York City that is feeding on the negative emotions of the citizens. But with the help of the Statue of Liberty and Bobby Brown's On Our Own, that didn't age well, the Busters defeat Vigo and his season of evil forever. This movie is insane.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you say that, it sounds pretty wacky. And before we get any further, like, Bobby Brown, not a good dude, but that song fucking slaps.
That song's a bop.
Like, that shit still crushes, and I play it almost daily. And I'm supporting a terrible dude, but still, I can't let it go.
Well, it's an iconic moment. They have the Statue of Liberty walk down the street, and it's like, and somehow instead of terrifying New York City, it's inspiring them to not be angry. It's just wild. So, Tyler, what was the scene or scenes that scared you the most? Like, why was this such a scarring experience for you to see Ghostbusters 2?
Well, for me, being 4 when I saw it, I didn't really get the humor.
Okay.
There's a lot of, and especially, because I'd seen the original Ghostbusters, but I think I had like the edited for TV on a VHS with commercials, version.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was also a huge fan of the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon that had come out a couple years before
yes.
Ghostbusters 2 came out. And going into this, obviously, I had all the toys and I was playing around, and it was always, something light and fun. And then when I went and saw this with my grandparents, the scene where Dana is giving her son a bath.
Yes.
And the pink ooze start. See, I had just graduated from the grandma's gonna give me a bath stage in my life. So I was riding solo after that. So it was terrifying to me. They have this pink ooze that comes out, and it looks kind of silly, now when you watch it, but it looks like some form of puppet that they used in the film.
You can see,
but
like, the tub kind of bend.
It's like powerful, and it lunges after them. And like now, I watched it today because I'm good at working ahead. So I finished it today, and now when I watch it, I'm just like, damn, Dana, all right, because she takes off her shirt, she's like in the bra. I'm like, what's up, girl? But when I'm 4, I'm just like, oh my God, the bathtub is going to eat that baby, and that's going to be me when I get home later. So that scene there's a lot of stuff in it that really just got to me. One of the biggest, besides the bathtub scene, was just Vigo himself.
Yeah. Yes, he's still pretty creepy.
Oh yeah, and Deadspin, I think it was, had an article maybe 4 or 5 years ago about just how
2015. I was going to bring that.
Oh, were you? Yeah, it was about how terrible that actor was as a human.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The article says that they called him the son of a Nazi soldier, a boxer, professional wrestler, failed actor, criminal, and, to quote, a miserable human being who was never so happy as when he could make someone else hate him.
Wow.
And you can kind of feel that. It's not really his voice in the movie, but just his stare, when he's the painting, and when he's actually coming out of the painting and trying to possess little Oscar, like, you can feel this dude just had some evil in him, and that came through when you were a kid.
Yeah, I remember as a kid really being affected by that painting. It's very ominous and forbidding.
It's like threatening, I guess, almost. Like his stance in it, and the scrunched eyebrows and the look, like, hey, I'm gonna wreck your world type of look. Yeah, I mean, even watching it today, I was like, I'm 34, and I was like, oh, ugh.
So you kind of mentioned this, but they ended up having to edit out his lines and dub over him because his voice was slurred and indistinct, and so the voice you're hearing is actually Max von Sydow.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and apparently neither did he, because he discovered at a screening and then stormed out of the theater.
Oh, that's rough.
Yep.
Oh, that's rough.
We'll definitely link to that Deadspin article in the show notes, because it's definitely worth a read. It's a fascinating. I reread it again today, and I was like, man, the guy's like, we're talking, he raped his sister's mother, like. And there was a thought that maybe he was his sister's father.
Oh my God!
Like,
what in the hell?
Horrible.
And just like he was like his dad was guard at Buchenwald, I think. Yeah.
Oh my.
Like super Hitler Youth type of stuff, but
right.
And then came over as a wrestler and wrestled with his dad, and then raped his stepmom, and it's just a bad dude. And obviously you don't know those things when you're in 1989 watching the movie, but there's a part of me that's watching and it's like, oh my God, you can totally see.
Oh yeah.
No wonder he gives off such a nasty vibe. Like, he really does give off a very evil, awful vibe. Huh.
Right.
And that coupled with the silliness of Janusz, his little handler is like, forgive me, Lord, it's a weird kind of juxtaposition of true evil and then just silly little man,
So this is my first time watching it was yesterday. I'd never actually seen Ghostbusters 2 because I just kind of figured it wouldn't be good, but I was mistaken. I actually very much enjoyed it. But one, all of those men are very attractive. I'm sorry, this is a very thirsty podcast for me today, apparently. I keep talking about how attractive everyone is. Harold Ramis, he's so cute. He's so cute. But this one just felt a little all over the place, which sounds weird because Ghostbusters is not really a very feasible, and it's a very outlandish plot. But for some reason, with the weird added romance plot with Dana, I just wasn't as much of a fan of that. It just felt like it was trying to be a lot of movies at one time.
And that's the original script that they had written didn't have Dana in it. It was a new love interest for Peter, a separate woman. I don't remember the character's name that they tried to do, but they tried that and it just didn't really work. And then they tried a script where Dana goes to Scotland and finds some fairy stones and then goes to this underworld that they have to go and save her from. So they tried a lot of different things, but I think what you're saying is they had to go back and refilm a lot of stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
Segments like the ghost train underneath in the subway, that was kind of added in afterwards, I believe. And the Janine Lewis romance was kind of added in later and kind of made them more like the cartoon characters.
Yes,
okay.
I was gonna bring that up because you mentioned the cartoon. I was a huge fan of the cartoon too, and that cartoon actually influenced a whole lot about this movie because because of that they added Slimer back in because he was such a big part of the cartoon show, and they made it a little bit more kid friendly. And it worked for me as a kid. I remember as a kid, I really, really loved this one more so than the first Ghostbusters that I thought at the time was kind of boring. But it turns out that a lot of that was just over my, my head as a kid.
I'm saying, I didn't catch, Ray's zipper going down in the bed. I didn't understand that the ghost was giving him a beach. I don't, when I'm a few years old, I don't know these things, and just watching this one, even a lot of the jokes went completely over my head as a kid, and now I'm watching oh, that's actually kind of funny.
They're so funny. They are hilarious. The comedic timing and just the jokes they tell that are very quick. It's just, I love their sense of humor.
Yeah, so, I was a big fan of as a kid. My favorite was actually Winston.
Oh, yeah.
So, obviously in the first movie, he had a bunch of his stuff cut out, and he wasn't very happy about it. But he's obviously a big part of the cartoon, voiced by Arsenio Hall, which is kind of wild. But yeah, I read a story today that Ernie Hudson actually auditioned for that, and they gave it to Arsenio Hall.
Shit.
It's like, it's actually my character, bro. Like, but anyways, but he's in this one more, so that really made me love this one more than the first, really.
Okay, that's interesting, but a good reason.
So you saw this in the movie theater. You were 4, which is kind of a theme that we're seeing here, because Molly Henry was 4 when she saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and weren't you 4?
I was 4 when I saw Jaws.
Yeah,
y'all are watching actually scary movies at 4, though.
Like that age seems to be a ripe one for kinder trauma. It's interesting. How do you remember the theatrical experience much?
I do really. It's weird the little things that I do remember. I remember that we went to Hardee's and he got like a little toy, so I've got to bring the toy in with me from my kids' meal. But growing up in a small town, it was just like a one-screen theater. That is now a Goodwill, if that tells you how big the place is, So I remember sitting down in the dark and seeing these characters that I loved, and then just these terrible things started happening to them, and I remember crying. And we eventually left right about where Oscar was abducted.
So you left the theater at that
Yeah, well, I was just hollering like crazy, so my grandparents were like, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, this kid's an embarrassment to our family. So, yeah. So, no, I remember leaving early and not actually catching it until a few years later.
Okay, and that was like the VHS copy.
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you think then when you were a little older?
It wasn't as scary. When I was 6 or 7, when I watched it again, I knew what was going to happen. I knew the tub. I knew the headless dudes in the subway. I knew about Vigo, and it seemed like different things scared me about it. Instead of those like kind of overt, here's something scary, what really got me the second time I watched it was the brief glimpses of Vigo that you see in the photographs when they're in their dark room before it catches on fire. Peter's taking these pictures and, being funny because he's Peter. But then, they're developing him and these photos go up. It's kind of like Shudder, actually. It's kind of a tie in there. But like his face is kind of morphing into something more alive. It's kind of almost running into something. And you don't see it for very long. But I remember watching it when I was in 1st or 2nd grade. And that really bothered me. And then later in the film, when he kind of possesses Ray, and he becomes like this bloated version of himself before they hose him down, with his little bloody stumps of horns coming out of his head. I had not seen that before, but that whole face morphing, the painting coming to life kind of thing is what bothered me the second time.
Fair. It is pretty awful.
Yeah. I it's surprising to me. This came out in '89, and it was rated PG, not PG-13, PG. And I don't think this movie would be PG today.
No, I don't think it would either. I don't think it should be.
I think they only cared about the language. Like back then, there's no blood and there's no language, so slap a PG on it.
That's true, but it is like pretty intense, like thematically intense.
Well, I remember this. What stuck out to me this time when I was rewatching it this weekend was the scene when right before the ghost train, and all of a sudden they're surrounded by all these heads on spikes.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, this is kind of dark.
It's definitely creepier than the first one. Like, I feel like they definitely like tried harder to make it creepier, if that makes sense.
You think so?
I don't know. I guess I just like, maybe because I haven't seen it before, but it felt creepier to me.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm so familiar with Ghostbusters and just love Ghostbusters so much that like I don't find it creepy. And that's probably something to do with that.
I just remember the scenes in the original Ghostbusters that terrified me was like when Dana's in the chair and all of a sudden the hands tear out of the chair and start like grabbing her and pulling on her.
Yeah.
And, like there's so many scenes like that I was like, oh, this is kind of even grim. And it felt like this one was a little bit more slapstick silly, like the slime and everything. But that scene in the underground just really, I think, is still a fantastic thrill.
Yeah, I had read something today that the original script that they actually they was like, okay, this is the final here, only had Vigo and like one other ghost in it. They had really pared back because, in the first you have the librarian and you've got the spooky, taxi drivers, and then obviously Slimer, even though he wasn't Slimer at that point. But so some of those reshoots that they did was like the heads in the subway, the ghost train, and stuff, like the guy jogging, the montage of them getting back together with those dope ass like gray suits that they had that they stopped wearing, even though they looked way better. But so adding more ghosts into it to make it more like the cartoon. Because if you like, the cartoon has some dark shit in it. Like there's a whole episode where they go to hell, and
oh boy,
yeah, and even the toys that they came out with were pretty wild. Like they had, they went into this whole like, let's make every type of thing a ghost. So I had like a toilet that turned into a ghost toy. And, it's like in werewolves and stuff. So they had a ton of different stuff that they tried to kind of stuff into this one. And it made it a little disjointed and it made it feel a little more slapstick, as you said.
I still think that the court scene with the
Scoleri brothers.
Scoleri brothers. I'm really impressed with the effects they did on that. Even today, like I really enjoyed that sequence.
And there's something to be said for, and I don't want to get into like the new Ghostbusters. I liked it, but I usually get yelled at when I say that I like it.
I love the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I'm glad you're on my side, Mary Beth. So, but
Terry,
yes,
you're being
very quiet.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, I'm asking you what.
Oh. No, I said I love it. I love the new one.
I didn't think you said anything, and I was like, your silence is disturbing me.
No. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it was fun. But where it kind of lost me was some of, it was just strictly CGI. And I understand.
Yeah.
We have the ability to do that. But when you look at, like, the Scoleri brothers in Ghostbusters 2, you could tell those are, like, two dudes in suits that they filmed, and then, they did their movie Ghost Magic and put them out on the screen, And
there's something to be said about the power of practical effects, though. Yeah. Like, I just feel like practical effects.
It's a natural movement that they're making, even when they're in their chairs, like strapped down to the electric chairs, they're actually making real movements. It's not over the top.
I will always champion practical effects. I think that they are better than CG. Even when they don't look as good as CG, they still feel grounded and real.
Yeah, I feel like bad practical effects are better than bad, like leagues better than bad CGI, because at least you can, like you said, Terry, like seek some kind of like life underneath of them, or like realize that they are like in the physical world, so it's not as jarring
if they're bad.
Yeah, I feel like when I watch like you can see that, like when you watch Fellowship of the Ring and then you watch The Hobbit. Like,
good
you can see the difference.
Yes.
The Uruk-hai or whatever they are, and then they're actually people in suits. And then in the later Hobbit films, Legolas is like jumping on air. There's no weight to it. There's no like reality to it. So it really takes you out of it.
It's just like a giant green screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think that is one of the more appropriate criticisms of the newer Ghostbusters is that they've focused way too much on CG.
Yeah.
But
it was fun, but it just, there is something to be said, like you said, with a puppet Slimer. It's just better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that there should be like a happy medium between the two. I mean, we obviously have the ability now to do corrections and do that kind of, post-processing stuff that like makes it look shiny and nice. But I think that there should be some kind of nice medium between being able to do practical effects and then maybe embellishing them.
It was my biggest criticism of it, Chapter 2 as well. It was just nothing felt real because nothing was real, and
that's my complaint about both of those movies.
Yeah, and you got the good jumpy, something's coming out of the dark, but when it's a 8-foot tall woman with mouths on her, like it's not. That doesn't feel anything for me, unlike, as shitty as, 1990 was, the original it was at least in the world, and you could actually feel that fear coming from the characters too.
Yeah.
So this was your first time seeing this, Mary Beth? Is that what you said?
It was my first time seeing this, yeah.
And you really you enjoyed it a lot, right?
I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? I totally forgot. I did really enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed it more than I expected. I just kind of always assume that sequels like that aren't going to be enjoyable or worth my time. But after Tyler wanted to watch it, I was like, okay, then there's something to this. And I actually really enjoyed it. I think I just kind of impose my own biases against sequels on it. But I mean, it's the same crew, and it was awesome. I guess, like, it was great to see Sigourney Weaver in it again. I was a little bit annoyed with her being, like, in love with Venkman, because that's just me watching movies and being like, she was so resistant in the first one. Like, why did we have to add this narrative? And like, it's fine that she's a mom. Like, I love me, like, a good single strong mom and horror narrative. But, like, I guess it just kind of got on my nerves a little bit that all of a sudden, like, she's the central romantic interest. I would have loved to have a movie with her in it, just, like, not maybe as a romantic interest. But this is just me, like, with my obsession with that kind of thing.
No, I completely agree. This time watching it, I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Tyler?
I was just going to agree as well. Like, she went from, they had this, like, kind of funny, witty banter when he first shows up to her apartment. And he's, talking to Oscar. He's like, was your dad stinky? Was your dad ugly like you?
I love that.
Yeah, it's like, but then she goes from, like, rebuffing him and realizing, hey, this dude was never going to commit to me, to they're on a date and making out within, like, 2 days.
Yeah, and that was just, like, a little bit frustrating to me, because I feel like her whole character has been built around this, like, kind of, I'm independent, and, like, her being a single mom, like, kills with that. Like, I'm independent, like, I don't need support from a man all the time. Like, I am a badass and can do this all by myself. And it's, like, completely undercut almost immediately.
That's one thing I definitely noticed this time around, because the first time that she's introduced back and talking with Egon, she's like, does he talk about me? I'm like, who is this? This isn't the Dana I know.
And that was my problem with it. Like,
and it also comes from, at this point, she's done Alien and Aliens. So, like, Sigourney Weaver's this badass. And then she's, like, just this love-starved, sick puppy that's like, oh, I just wish she would have said yes to marrying me. I'm like, no.
She's like, oh, you never asked me. I was like, you should have said no anyway.
Yeah.
The dude's a bum. Like, come on.
Dude is a bum.
He's cute and he's funny, but he's definitely a bum. So
it'd be exhausting, I think, to live with.
It would be exhausting. Like, it would just be, like, constantly joking, and you'd be like, okay, I get it. Like, ha ha ha. Please wash the dishes. You are a slob and you are disgusting. Please, for the love of God.
Don't wrap my baby in a Jets jersey,
One thing I did like is when we see him again, and he is the host of that the psychic talk show.
Yeah.
And he's interviewing the one guy who's saying that the world is going to end on New Year's Eve. And he was kind of right.
Okay, I was thinking that, like, are we just never going to revisit that guy predicted the future? Like, we're not.
I want to see a movie with him.
But like it's something that they continued from the first film, because there's this one part in the first film where they're doing tests on psychic abilities.
Yeah.
And the kid is always one card ahead of everyone, of like what they're saying, and so like they're like, he doesn't have that ability, but he's literally like a card ahead. And so it kind of was like a nice little callback to that this guy basically said, yep, we're fucked come 1 January. And I mean that's kind of how the movie
yeah, and he's like, doesn't it, just from a sales perspective, that's like, come on, kind of push it out a few years. But no, yeah, I really that's a show that I would watch probably if it were real. So like that's kind of my jam. And also, that, and you bring that up, but seeing them living their non-Ghostbuster lives was really fun to me as an adult going back and watching this. Because I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, I was just like, why aren't they driving around and shooting ghosts with their proton packs? But, Egon doing his thing at the theoretical research place, and Ray and Winston at the birthday party, I thought that was fantastic,
And Ray owns an occult bookstore.
That is my life. Like, that's my dream. Yeah. Like, he's just sitting there reading spooky shit all day and selling occult books like that. Yeah, that watching it as an adult, I'm like, I would like to be any of these people.
But it also made me a little bit sad because it was like, I mean, we mentioned it a little bit in the synopsis, like they're facing the consequences, which is kind of cool to see them face those consequences of like the destruction, but also at the same time it's so sad to see their passion get kind of like ripped away from them. I guess that's just me being like in my late 20s and like thinking about like the future and just like the pain of having something like that ripped away from you is so sad, and like having to go to like kid parties and have kids like laugh at you and then have people say like not understand that what you did was save the city. And I don't know, it made me feel very sad, which is like so weird. It's just Ghostbusters too, but I was like, oh man, this is awful. Like what a like awful thing to have like what you love to do completely like ridiculed, and it made me feel so sad.
Yeah, when obviously I've never lived in New York. I lived in Chicago for a while when I went to college, but like how quick does someone? It's only 5 years. Like that's like a 9/11 level. I know that might be blasphemy, but that's like a huge thing that a big marshmallow man was, like walking through, America's largest city. Like everyone forgot.
And all the ghosts that came out, like obviously it was like a citywide problem, and that's one of those things that's like you would think everyone would remember, and like society would be forever changed. Yeah,
there should be statues like of these dudes, but they got kids yelling He-Man in their face, and the mayor. I don't know the name of the actor, but the guy who plays the assistant.
Yes, he's in everything.
He's just. I know. I just know him from Psych because that's one of my wife's favorite shows. But he just plays the oily, piece of shit better than anybody. And like, really, dude, you probably had a ghost in your house like 5 years ago, and now you're acting like an asshole. Like, I just don't get it. But
yeah, it definitely it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Jaws 2, where it's like, oh. You remember that shark? Well, we might have another one. Oh, there's no such thing as sharks. They're not going to come in and kill us again. That's just stupid. But it just kind of reminded me of that. And of course, like the
mayor is now running for governor and doesn't want any of this to tarnish.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like in Jaws 2 when the dude is still the mayor. Like, come on now.
Right.
Y'all didn't learn anything.
All right. Thank you, Tyler, for joining us to talk about Ghostbusters 2. So where can our listeners find you, and do you have any thing coming up that you want to plug?
You can find me on the Twitter machine at Ty Liston, TYLISTON. You can find me there. I post like every 2 days whenever I can find time, but they're usually pretty cool. You can also find me at nofspodcast.com. I'm one of the writers there. You can check out my new stuff. I've got stuff coming up later this month that's going to be really fun for our domestic horror month there at Nightmare on Film Street. I'm going to be doing some cool stuff towards the end of the month. So check it out.
Awesome. So you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What is your experience with Ghostbusters 2? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature you on an upcoming episode. You can also reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, tag us at Scarred Podcast if you want to talk about the podcast on Twitter.
Please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork and to Sean Keller for our amazing theme music. Thank you everyone for listening, and stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is the briefing room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.